why you want to lie down all day. Carl Jung's surprising truth about what your soul is really asking for. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Carl Jung once said, a reminder that even our exhaustion has a deeper message. In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we explore why you may feel the urge to lie down all day and what your soul is truly asking for beneath the surface. This isn't laziness, and it isn't weakness. It's a profound inner signal calling you back to alignment, balance, and emotional truth. As you listen, I encourage you to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever felt drained for reasons you couldn't explain? Comment below and share your thoughts, because your story may help someone else feel less alone on their journey toward healing and personal growth. 1. The urge to lie down is not laziness, it is the soul speaking. The urge to lie down is not laziness, it is the soul speaking. Carl Jung understood that when you feel unbearably heavy, unmotivated, or unable to rise, even when your mind tells you that you should, you are not becoming weaker. You are being called inward. He believed that the psyche withdraws energy from anything that no longer aligns with your inner truth. And this withdrawal shows up in the body long before the conscious mind is willing to face the truth. The body becomes the messenger for the soul, revealing what your awareness has been avoiding, and the desire to lie down becomes the clearest sign that something inside you is asking for attention. This heaviness is not random. It is the result of an inner conflict between who you are expected to be and who your soul is urging you to become. When you push yourself through obligations that feel empty, relationships that exhaust your spirit, or environments that suffocate your growth, your psyche begins to quietly pull the plug on your outer life. It withdraws energy from tasks, commitments, and identities that no longer serve your deeper purpose. What you interpret as tiredness is often a spiritual redirection, a shift toward inner alignment that marks the early stages of a spiritual awakening. Your exhaustion is not a collapse, it is a recalibration. Jung taught that the body speaks when the mind refuses to listen, and this truth becomes unavoidable when you begin to notice how your body reacts to misalignment. The tightening in your chest around certain people, the sudden lack of energy before work, the heaviness you feel in conversations where you cannot be yourself. These experiences accumulate until your system can no longer sustain the emotional weight you've been carrying. That is when the urge to lie down becomes overwhelming. Your body is not betraying you. It is protecting you. It is slowing you down so you can stop betraying yourself. This is why lying down often feels like the only thing you can do during times of transition, heartbreak, burnout, or inner confusion. The psyche gathers its energy inward to prepare for transformation, the way the body conserves strength during healing. In spirituality, this is recognized as the soul's way of initiating deep inner work. Fatigue becomes a doorway, inviting you to notice the parts of your life that drain you, the patterns you have outgrown, and the truths you have been too busy or afraid to confront. And because spiritual awakening is not simply a moment of enlightenment, but a gradual process of becoming more honest with yourself, the body naturally slows down to guide you through this inner shift. The desire to lie down all day is often the moment your soul stops whispering and begins speaking loudly enough that you can no longer ignore it. It is telling you that you have been carrying too much, giving too much, or pretending for too long. It is telling you that your energy no longer belongs to old roles, old versions of yourself, or old expectations that suffocate your spirit. It is telling you that rest is not indulgence, but instruction. And when you finally listen, when you allow yourself to lie down without shame, you begin to hear the deeper messages underneath the fatigue. You begin to understand what needs to be released, what needs to be healed, and what your soul has been asking for all along: alignment, truth, and a return to yourself. If this message resonated with you and helped you understand your soul's quiet call for rest, comment below. I listen to my soul. Your engagement helps us bring more spiritual wisdom to you. 2. Stillness is the beginning of inner transformation. Stillness is the beginning of inner transformation. And when you feel that heavy pull that makes you want to lie down all day, it is not a sign of weakness, but a sign that your soul is slowing you down so it can rearrange your inner world from a deeper place than the mind can reach. This heaviness is your inner self, guiding you into what can be called an inner winter, a quiet season where everything in your life pauses just long enough for your unconscious to begin rebuilding your identity from the inside out. Much like a chrysalis holding the butterfly during its most sacred transformation. In spirituality and spiritual development, these slow, quiet phases are often the birthplace of clarity. And although they may feel uncomfortable, they are necessary for releasing what no longer aligns with who you are becoming. Because your soul refuses to let you rush a transformation that requires depth, rest, and silence. You may feel confused about your lack of energy or your desire to withdraw. Yet this withdrawal is not avoidance. It is your inner world pulling your attention away from noise, expectations, and emotional clutter so you can finally hear the truths you have been ignoring. Carl Jung taught that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this phase of stillness is the moment that unconscious material rises to be reorganized, healed, and understood. As you move through this inner winter, you might notice that your motivation fades, your mind becomes quieter, and your desire for productivity dissolves. But this is happening because transformation takes enormous internal energy, and the soul often shuts down the external world so it can focus entirely on the inner one. The tiredness you feel is not a sign that you are falling behind, but a sign that you are shedding an old version of yourself, old beliefs, old pressures, old emotional burdens, and that shedding requires your full attention, even if it looks like stillness to everyone else. The more you try to fight this need for rest, the heavier everything becomes, because your soul will not allow you to rush what must be rebuilt with precision. This is why lying down feels like the only thing you can do. Your inner self is calling you into a deep reset, a recalibration that cannot take place in chaos or noise. You are entering a phase where your identity softens before it strengthens, where your inner structure dissolves so it can be remade into something clearer, truer, and more aligned with the life you are meant to grow into. So instead of judging yourself, allow this stillness to work through you, knowing that your exhaustion is not a flaw, but a message. Your desire to slow down is not laziness, but preparation. And your inner winter is not stagnation, but the foundation of a new beginning. And as you honor this season, take with you these essential lessons. You are not losing yourself. You are returning to yourself. You are not stopping. You are being prepared. You are not broken. You are being rewired. And every moment you choose rest, you choose healing, alignment, and a deeper spiritual development that will carry you forward into the next chapter of who you are meant to become. 3. The body reacts before the mind understands. Your body reacts before your mind understands. And Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom shows us why. The body carries truths that the mind avoids. When you feel an overwhelming urge to lie down, when your energy suddenly fades, or when exhaustion appears at the smallest task, it isn't simply physical tiredness. It is your inner self signaling that something in your life is out of alignment. Your body senses misalignment long before your thinking catches up. It feels emotional truth before you speak it. It recognizes grief before you accept it, and it registers fear before you consciously admit it. This is why Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain, because the moment you resist your inner truth, your body begins to carry the burden for you. Fatigue becomes the first warning sign that a part of your life no longer fits who you are becoming. You might tell yourself, you are just stressed, busy, or overworked. But if you look closely, you will notice that your deepest exhaustion appears around certain people, certain expectations, and certain versions of yourself that your soul has already outgrown. The body grows heavy when you are forcing yourself to stay where your spirit no longer wants to be. It becomes slow when you are pretending to be okay. It loses energy when you are living in ways that betray your emotional needs. And when your body refuses to follow routines that once felt normal, it is not failing you. It is trying to keep you from failing yourself. Spiritual wisdom teaches that the body always stops supporting the parts of life that no longer support your growth. This is why rest becomes a form of truth-telling. When your soul is tired, no amount of sleep will revive you. When your heart is burdened, no amount of productivity will heal you. And when your spirit is resisting something, your entire body will feel it. The desire to lie down all day is not a desire to escape life. It is a desire to escape the life that is no longer true for you. It is your inner self pulling you inward, asking you to pause, to listen, to see what you have been ignoring. If you slow down long enough, you will notice that your exhaustion has patterns. You are not tired everywhere. You are tired in the places where your truth is being silenced. You are tired around the things that drain you, the roles that confine you, and the expectations that suffocate you. That heaviness is your soul speaking through your body, urging you toward what needs to be healed, released, or transformed. And as Jung reminded us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Your body is trying to make the unconscious conscious. It wants you to notice what your mind has been pushing aside. Your tiredness is not your enemy. It is your compass. It shows you where your energy is leaking, where your boundaries are breaking, and where your spirit is craving change. When you honor these signals, instead of judging them, you begin to reconnect with the deeper wisdom inside you, the part of you that refuses to live a life that is too small for your soul. And in that quiet awareness, you finally understand that lying down is not giving up. It is listening. It is the moment your soul asks you to return to yourself. Are you ready to honor what your soul is trying to tell you? If this message resonates, and you're ready to listen to the signals your body sends before your mind can make sense of them. Comment below. I am listening to my soul. Your commitment creates space for deeper healing and spiritual wisdom. 4. Jung identified 5 sacred forms of soul tiredness, each a message. When Carl Jung spoke of the quiet exhaustion that rises from the soul, he wasn't talking about the kind of tiredness that sleep can fix, but the deeper fatigue that signals a spiritual shift, a quiet invitation into spirituality and spiritual awakening. He described 5 sacred forms of soul tiredness, each one a message disguised as exhaustion, beginning with misalignment fatigue, the heaviness you feel when the life you are living does not reflect who you truly are inside. This is the weight that settles over you when your actions contradict your values, when your choices please everyone but yourself, and when your days are filled with obligations that silence your inner voice. It is the fatigue of pretending, of forcing yourself into roles that do not fit, and the soul responds not with anger, but with exhaustion, urging you to stop abandoning yourself and return to the path that feels real and right for you. Flowing naturally from this truth is the second form, unmourned grief. Fatigue, the deep inner drain that comes from carrying pain you never had the space, support, or safety to release. This is the grief you push down because life demanded your strength, the heartbreak you brushed aside because you had responsibilities to maintain, and the disappointments you swallowed because you had no one to confide in. When grief is left unprocessed, it does not disappear. It settles into the body as heaviness, making you feel as though the simplest tasks require extraordinary effort. Your desire to lie down becomes a quiet reminder that your soul is still holding the weight of what was never mourned, asking you to slow down enough to finally feel what you once had to ignore. This sense of heaviness deepens into the third form, emotional overload fatigue, often felt by those who are sensitive, empathic, or deeply attuned to the emotional undercurrents around them. You may not even realize how much you absorb other people's fears, stress, unspoken tension, expectations, and emotional chaos. And over time, this accumulation becomes too much for your system to manage. Your soul pulls you into stillness as an act of protection, making lying down feel like the only refuge where your nervous system can reset. Jung understood that this kind of tiredness is not weakness, but a sign of emotional saturation, a sign that your inner world needs space, boundaries, and solitude to clear and recover. From here, the fourth form, transition fatigue, emerges, a unique exhaustion that appears during profound inner transformation. This is the tiredness that comes when an old version of you is dissolving, but the new version has not yet taken form. It is the fatigue of standing in the doorway between identities, where what once made sense no longer does, and what is coming has not yet arrived. Your energy drops because your psyche is reorganizing itself. Your beliefs are shifting, your desires are recalibrating, and your sense of self is restructuring from the inside out. Within spirituality and spiritual awakening, this is a sacred stage, but also a draining one, and the soul often demands rest so it can rebuild the new self with clarity. Finally, there is blocked creativity, fatigue, the exhaustion that emerges when your natural creative flow, your desire to express, build, imagine, or bring something meaningful to life is suppressed by fear, routine, or external pressure. Creativity is not just artistic expression. It is the soul's way of releasing energy. And when that energy cannot move, it turns inward and becomes fatigue. Your desire to lie down becomes a quiet plea from your spirit, asking for expression, expansion, and the freedom to create something that restores your sense of aliveness. 5. Lying down is a sacred pause where the unconscious reorganizes you. When you feel the urge to lie down all day, you are not collapsing or giving up. You are entering a state Carl Jung described as a sacred inner recalibration, because lying down is a sacred pause where the unconscious reorganizes you. This moment of stillness is not a weakness, but a powerful stage of psychic incubation, a phase in which your inner world silently dissolves the identities you have outgrown, releases the emotional weight you have carried for too long, and begins repairing the unseen fractures within you. Nothing appears to be happening on the outside, yet inside you, everything is shifting, realigning, and rebuilding itself with remarkable intelligence. During this period, your soul retreats from noise, pressure, and expectations so it can gently process accumulated grief, untangle old patterns, and soften emotional armor that once helped you survive but now prevents your growth. This is where spirituality and spiritual development deepen, because your unconscious is working quietly to expand your capacity for clarity, strength, and emotional truth. The tiredness you feel is not the symptom of failure, but the signal that your inner system is hard at work, rebalancing what has been overwhelmed for years. As you lie down, your nervous system finally finds room to breathe. Your deeper mind begins rearranging stored memories, and your heart prepares to release what no longer supports your becoming. Jung believed that the unconscious always moves you toward wholeness, even when the conscious mind thinks you are falling behind. And that is exactly what is happening when your body demands stillness. You are not avoiding life. You are being restructured for a new chapter of it. You lie down because something deep within you knows it is time to stop performing, stop pretending, and stop forcing yourself into states of constant productivity that drain your inner truth. This is the space where you are emptied so you can be refilled, where remnants of your old identity dissolve so a more grounded self can emerge, and where your soul prepares you for the emotional and spiritual capacity needed for a higher level of living. So when your body tells you to rest, trust that it is responding to a spiritual intelligence working beneath the surface. You are being prepared, strengthened, and renewed in ways you cannot yet see. And within this seemingly quiet stillness, your inner architecture is being rebuilt piece by piece so that when you rise again, you rise clearer, lighter, and more aligned with the life you are meant to live. Don't forget to subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights like this, reminders that lying down isn't laziness, but a sacred pause where your unconscious is quietly reorganizing you. If this message speaks to your soul, drop a comment saying, "I honor my inner rest." 6. Modern culture misunderstands stillness and worships constant productivity. Modern culture misunderstands stillness and worships constant productivity, teaching you that your value comes from motion, noise, and endless output. Yet Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds you that the psyche does not operate like a machine, but moves in natural cycles just like the earth itself. Because nothing in nature blooms all year. and nothing in the universe grows without first returning to silence. You are not meant to stretch yourself endlessly. And when your soul urges you to lie down all day, it is not weakness. It is a message from your deeper consciousness telling you that something inside is trying to repair, reset, and reorganize itself. Jung once said, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." And you cannot look into your heart when you are rushing, forcing, and performing for the world. You can only hear your inner truth when your mind stops, when your breath softens, and when your body is finally allowed to rest. This is why stillness is not regression or failure, but an essential stage of psychological, emotional, and spiritual evolution. A quiet phase where your nervous system recalibrates, your unprocessed emotions rise to the surface, and your intuition begins to speak again after being drowned out by constant activity. The world may tell you to keep going no matter what, but your inner world, your subconscious, your body, your spirit demands balance, rhythm, and periods of deep restoration. When you ignore this cycle, fatigue becomes louder. When you honor it, clarity returns. And in those moments when you feel the urge to collapse into stillness, understand that your soul is gathering strength for the next chapter, just as winter prepares the ground for spring, and just as night prepares the mind for the coming dawn. Rest is not an interruption of your growth, but part of the architecture of your growth, a spiritual alignment that allows your energy to be rebuilt from the inside out. When you slow down, you are not losing progress. You are reclaiming yourself, reconnecting with your intuition, and remembering what truly matters beneath all the expectations placed upon you. In this gentle pause, you rediscover your center, your purpose, and your inner balance, and you realize that the longing to lie down is not laziness, but a sacred invitation from your soul to return to the rhythm that nature has always known. Inhale, exhale, expand, retreat, rise, rest, become, and then become again. 7. The inner dialogue begins when the body grows still. When the body grows still, a quiet doorway opens inside you, pulling you into a deeper realm where the noise of the outer world finally loosens its grip. In that pause, what feels like tiredness is often the soul's way of calling you inward, a gentle insistence that you listen. Carl Jung reminded us that who looks inside awakens. And this awakening begins the moment your muscles relax, your breath settles, and your awareness begins to shift from doing to simply being. This stillness is not laziness or avoidance. It is the natural threshold of spirituality and spiritual awakening. The moment when your unconscious begins speaking in the only language it trusts: sensations, emotions, symbols, half-formed images, and whispers of memories that surface the instant your ego stops pushing. This inner dialogue does not shout. It emerges like a soft current underneath everything you carry. When you lie down and feel waves of emotion rising for no reason, when forgotten memories slip into your awareness, when strange images flash behind your eyes, or when your chest feels heavy without knowing why, this is your soul doing exactly what Jung described through the process of active imagination, communicating truths that cannot be spoken with ordinary words. These signals bypass logic because logic has never been able to touch the deepest parts of you. Instead, the soul uses imagery because imagery cannot be rationalized away. It uses bodily sensations because the body remembers what the mind forgets. It uses dreams because dreams move without permission. carrying messages from the unconscious into the waking world. As you slow down enough to feel these subtle impressions, you begin to realize that your exhaustion has always been more than physical. It is the tiredness of carrying emotions you never processed, responsibilities that were never yours, expectations you silently inherited, and versions of yourself you have been performing for too long. The body collapses not because it is weak, but because it is wise, because it knows that healing begins only when you pause, only when you stop negotiating with your own truth, only when you finally allow everything inside you to rise without being dismissed. In this state, the ego loosens, and the unconscious steps forward with clarity, offering fragments of insight through sensations that feel new yet strangely familiar, as if you always knew them but never had the quiet to hear them. The urge to lie down is the psyche's most honest request for connection. It is an invitation to return to your depth, to sit with the unfiltered intelligence of your inner world, and to listen without rushing toward solutions. When you accept this invitation, you begin to sense meanings in your emotions, direction in your discomfort, and guidance in your dreams. What once felt like fatigue becomes recognition. What once felt like heaviness becomes information. What once felt like emptiness becomes the birthplace of renewal. In this silence, you meet the parts of yourself that have waited patiently for you to return the intuitive voice you ignored, the unprocessed experiences held in your chest, the creativity buried under your obligations, and the inner truth that emerges only when everything else fades. Here, the soul rises, and the journey continues from the inside out. 8. The heaviness marks the death of old identity and the birth of a new self. The heaviness in your body, the urge to lie down, the strange pull toward quiet is not a failure, but a sign that something inside you is ending, so something truer can begin. Because in the words of Carl Jung, the heaviness marks the death of old identity and the birth of a new self. When you lie down, you are not escaping life. You are shedding the old layers you no longer need. The values that once defined you, but no longer align with your growth. The relationships that pulled you away from yourself. The expectations you carried to be accepted, and the roles you performed because you thought you had to, rather than because they reflected who you truly were. This heaviness slows you down, because slowing down is the only way your soul can begin rearranging itself from the inside out. And in that stillness, spirituality starts to work on you quietly, reminding you that transformation often requires rest, silence, and surrender instead of constant motion. The reason you feel tired is because you are unknowingly releasing emotional burdens you have carried for years. And as those layers fall away, your inner world begins to reorganize, allowing a wiser, more aligned, more authentic version of you to take shape. You may notice your old ambitions suddenly feel distant, as if they belong to someone you no longer are. This happens because your identity is shifting, and the self you are becoming refuses to move forward with goals that were built on survival instead of truth. You might also feel detached from people or situations that once held power over you. And this detachment is not numbness. It is clarity, the kind that comes from spiritual development as your intuition shows you what is no longer healthy for you to hold on to. The urge to lie down becomes a sacred moment of recalibration where your nervous system softens, Your emotional patterns break apart, and your soul finally has room to breathe. In that quiet space, your thoughts slow down long enough for you to hear what you have ignored for so long. The exhaustion was never just physical, it was emotional, mental, and spiritual. A sign that your inner world was asking for release long before your outer world began to reflect it. When you allow yourself to rest without guilt, you make space for new clarity to rise, the kind that helps you understand which beliefs are outdated, which habits no longer serve your path, and which parts of you are ready to be reborn. This period of heaviness is not punishment. It is preparation, a necessary pause between who you were and who you are becoming. So as you move through this silent transformation, let the heaviness teach you these lessons: that rest is not weakness, but wisdom; that lying down is often the doorway to strength rather than the opposite; that your soul speaks the loudest when your body becomes still; and that every moment of fatigue is guiding you toward a more truthful, grounded, and spiritually aligned life. One where you no longer carry identities that were never yours. Because the self emerging from this stillness is clearer, stronger, and far more authentic than the one you have been shedding. To honor this powerful moment of shedding the old and stepping into who you are becoming, take a conscious step forward. Comment below, "I rise renewed," to affirm your transformation and inspire others who are also awakening to their new self. 9. Energy returns gently when the transformation is complete. Energy returns gently when transformation has finally done its quiet work beneath the surface, not suddenly, but softly, the way early spring warms the earth long before the flowers appear. You begin to feel a subtle clarity rising inside you, a quiet curiosity, a small but unmistakable warmth spreading through your inner world. And as this happens, your soul rises first, while your body slowly follows, reminding you that healing always begins in the unseen places. And when your soul rises like this, you must rise slowly too, without rushing, without pushing, and with deep respect for the new self that was formed in silence. Because as Carl Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens," and this tiredness that has been pulling you inward is a sign that an inner awakening is unfolding in ways your mind cannot yet understand. The desire to lie down all day is not a mistake or a weakness. It is your soul tugging gently on your awareness, asking you to turn inward so it can guide you onto a truer path. In this state, you are not shutting down. You are being recalibrated. Your nervous system is reorganizing after carrying too much for too long. Your identity is shedding what no longer belongs, and your intuition is clearing out false expectations to make space for a deeper truth. This is why you feel heavy, even when nothing is physically wrong. Why your thoughts grow quiet and your body asks for stillness. Because your inner world is doing the kind of work that can only happen when everything on the outside becomes still. And although the world may tell you to keep moving, to keep producing, to keep proving your worth, spiritual wisdom teaches you something far more powerful. Rest is not the opposite of growth. Rest creates growth. When you lie down, you are allowing your soul to reorganize your energy in ways you cannot yet see. Rest becomes the womb where transformation takes root, where your next version is shaped with precision and tenderness. It prepares you for the chapter you have not stepped into yet. And just like a seed must stay buried in darkness before it breaks open into light. You too must honor the darkness of stillness, the slowness of healing, and the quietness of becoming. This is why energy returns slowly, because your inner world is rebuilding a foundation strong enough to carry the life you are growing toward. And what rises slowly tends to last. So when you feel pulled to lie down, when stillness calls you more loudly than action, allow yourself to follow, because your soul is guiding you, protecting you, and building you from the inside out. Rest is sacred. Rest is preparation. Rest is the silent architect of your next becoming. In the end, Carl Jung reminds us that the urge to lie down all day is rarely laziness. It is your soul's quiet cry for restoration, alignment, and deeper self-understanding. When you honor that inner voice, you begin to reconnect with your true nature and reclaim the balance your spirit has been asking for. If this message from spiritual wisdom resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Your journey of inner healing and awakening continues here. The psychological reason adult children turn against their parents. The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. Carl Jung. Welcome back to Spiritual Wisdom. Today, we're diving into one of the most painful and misunderstood experiences a parent can face: when an adult child turns away. In this video, we explore the deep psychological forces often hidden in the unconscious that shape distance, resentment, and silence within families. More importantly, we uncover what these patterns mean for your own healing, growth, and emotional freedom. As you listen, I invite you to reflect on your own story. Have you ever experienced this kind of emotional separation, either as a parent or as a child? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your voice may bring comfort to someone who feels alone. Let's begin this journey toward clarity, compassion, and inner peace. 1. The pain of parental abandonment. Of all human heartbreaks, few cut as deeply as watching your own children pull away. Because when a parent who once gave everything now sits in front of a silent phone or an empty doorway, it feels like the universe has collapsed into a single unanswered question. Why did the people I loved the most choose to leave me behind? Yet Carl Jung reminds us that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. And through this lens, the distance between parent and child becomes not just an act of rejection, but a complex psychological and spiritual response to years of unspoken emotional weight. Many adult children do not wake up one day and suddenly decide to abandon their parents. Instead, this distance forms slowly through unresolved conflicts, repeated moments of feeling unheard, years of subtle criticism, or the quiet expectation that they must sacrifice their own identity to maintain harmony. What looks like coldness is often the child's attempt to breathe, because for some, every interaction triggers old wounds, guilt, pressure, comparison, or the feeling that love must be earned rather than freely given. And when the nervous system associates a parent with emotional danger instead of emotional safety, withdrawal becomes a form of survival. From the outside, the parent may only see disrespect, ingratitude, or sudden disinterest. But underneath, the adult child may be fleeing from patterns that shaped their entire upbringing. Patterns the parent may not even realize existed. Jung warned that nothing shapes a child more than the parts of a parent's life the parent refused to face, and many children carry not just their own pain, but the emotional burdens their parents never resolved. Loneliness masked as control, fear disguised as criticism, disappointment hidden inside high expectations. When this weight becomes too heavy, separation becomes not an attack, but a desperate act of self-preservation. Spiritually, some souls choose families that challenge them in the deepest ways so that they may awaken, break generational cycles, and rediscover their true identity beyond the roles placed upon them. This process of spiritual awakening can appear harsh, especially to the parent who feels abandoned, but on a soul level, it is an attempt to heal wounds that have echoed across generations. For many parents, this distance feels like betrayal, yet it is often the result of misunderstandings that accumulated over years. A child who was constantly told to be strong may now avoid the parent because they were never allowed to be vulnerable. A child who was scolded for expressing emotions may now protect themselves through silence. A child who was expected to care for a parent's feelings may now cut contact to finally build their own life without carrying emotional debts they never chose. This does not mean the parent was intentionally hurtful. It means the emotional landscape of the family was shaped by unspoken rules, survival patterns, and inherited pain that no one was taught how to navigate. But when the parent dares to look inward instead of only outward, something transformative happens. The question shifts from, "Why are they doing this to me?" to, "What pain have they been carrying that I have never truly seen?" And this shift opens the door to healing. For both spirituality teaches that relationships act as mirrors, reflecting the parts of ourselves we avoid, and having your own child turn away is one of the harshest mirrors life can hold up, forcing you to confront not only who they are, but who you became through years of habit, fear, and unexamined patterns. This reflection is not meant to punish, but to awaken, because even small shifts in awareness, learning to listen without defense, apologizing without justification, and acknowledging the emotions that were overlooked can begin to soften years of tension. Even if the child is not ready to return, the parent's inner work is never wasted, because change occurs first in energy before it appears in physical form. And when a parent commits to understanding, healing, and releasing old patterns, the emotional atmosphere of the relationship begins to shift. In the end, the distance between a parent and a child is rarely rooted in a single event. It is woven from unmet needs, unspoken truths, inherited wounds, and the difficult psychological process of carving out identity. While the past cannot be rewritten, the present can become a turning point when approached with humility, honesty, and a sincere desire to break the cycle. Because even in the silence, connection is not lost. It is waiting for the moment when both souls are ready to meet again in truth rather than in pain. 2. Common reasons for estrangement. When adult children turn away from their parents, the reasons are rarely simple, and Carl Jung's psychology shows us that estrangement often grows from emotional wounds that were never understood or healed. Many adult children still carry scars from childhood, especially if they felt their parents were too strict, too controlling, or emotionally unavailable. And even when you believed you were doing the best you could, your child may have experienced those moments as pressure, fear, or a loss of safety. This emotional memory doesn't disappear with age. It lingers in the subconscious, shaping how they relate to you now. When they distance themselves, it is often a form of self-protection, an attempt to escape emotions they never learned to process, not a direct rejection of your worth or identity as a parent. Yet beyond personal history, society itself plays a powerful role in widening the gap between parents and children, because modern culture glorifies independence and subtly teaches that caring for parents is a burden rather than a blessing. The media encourages cutting ties as a symbol of strength and choosing yourself, without acknowledging the heartbreak left behind. Many young adults absorb the belief that emotional boundaries mean avoidance, that healing means disconnecting, and that adulthood means forgetting where they came from. This cultural shift creates an invisible wall between generations, making love feel heavy and responsibility feel old-fashioned. Family conflict adds another layer, because unhealed tension has a long memory. Jung once said, "What is not made conscious appears in our lives as fate." And this is painfully true within families. Past divorces, arguments, betrayals, financial stress, remarriages, or years of silent resentment create emotional cracks that children feel deeply. Even when the conflict is over, the emotional climate it created can linger for decades. Adult children may step away, not because they do not care, but because the atmosphere of the past still feels unsafe or heavy. The problem is that their distance shows up as coldness, while the true reason is unspoken pain. However, another side must also be acknowledged: entitlement and lack of gratitude. Some adult children take their parents for granted, believing they owe nothing in return for the sacrifices made for them. This mindset is fueled by a culture that tells individuals they are self-made, ignoring the love, labor, and sleepless nights that shaped their foundation. When adult children operate from entitlement, they may dismiss their parents' needs, minimize their sacrifices, and behave with indifference or disrespect. This is not a reflection of your failures, but of their lack of emotional maturity and spiritual development. When you place these truths side by side, a larger picture emerges, one that blends psychology with spirituality. Estrangement is not only a relationship issue, it is a mirror showing the unhealed wounds on both sides and the cultural forces that push families apart. Jung's insight invites you to look beneath the surface and ask deeper questions about what pain remains unspoken, what generational patterns remain unresolved, and how both you and your child have been shaped by pressures far bigger than your home. Through the lens of spiritual development, you begin to see that healing starts not by demanding change from your child, but by understanding your own heart, acknowledging what you could not offer in the past, and cultivating compassion for both sides of the story. And from this understanding come the lessons. Do not let your child's distance define your worth. Look honestly at any pain you may have contributed to and offer humility rather than shame. Resist the urge to chase or beg, and instead keep your heart open with dignity. And finally, use this season to grow in your own spirituality, healing your own wounds so that if reconciliation comes, it comes to a stronger, wiser version of you. Because even if your relationship does not repair overnight, the inner work you do becomes a quiet light that one day may guide your child back, not out of guilt, but out of genuine readiness to reconnect. 3. The Jungian perspective, individuation. Carl Jung believed that every child must eventually separate from their parents to form a true and independent identity. And when you look at this through the lens of spiritual wisdom, you begin to see that this separation is not a rejection, but a natural stage of inner growth. Individuation, as Jung called it, is the lifelong process of becoming whole. And for many adult children, this journey requires creating emotional distance from the place where their earliest patterns were formed. Yet when this natural separation becomes extreme, it does not feel like growth. It feels like abandonment, leaving both parent and child carrying wounds that neither fully understands. And here lies the painful paradox. The same child who once needed you for everything now feels the need to step away from you to find themselves, not because they hate you, but because they are wrestling with parts of their own shadow they discovered within the relationship. This is why Jung said, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent, pointing to the invisible, emotional weight children often carry without realizing it. The expectations, the fears, the dreams, and the unspoken pressures that shape them long before they are old enough to choose who they want to be. Many adult children pull away, not from the parent, but from the version of themselves they became in the parent's presence, and the distance becomes a way to escape the emotional script they were handed. A child who grows up feeling unseen may avoid the parent to avoid that feeling. A child who absorbed their parents' pain may step back to stop absorbing it. A child who never found their own voice may need silence to hear it for the first time. But from the parent's perspective, these inner battles look like coldness, disrespect, or indifference, especially when the phone stops ringing or visits become rare. Emotional estrangement is rarely caused by one dramatic moment. It is usually the result of years of unexpressed feelings, misunderstandings, unmet needs, or wounds that were never addressed. And because humans often fear confrontation, many children choose distance over dialogue, believing that space will protect them from old pain. What makes this even more complex is that both sides often feel misunderstood at the same time. Parents mourn the loss of closeness, thinking, "Where did I go wrong?" While children feel overwhelmed by emotions they cannot name, thinking, "I can't go back without losing myself." This silent tension deepens the gap until the relationship feels frozen in place. Jung warned that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this explains why estrangement can become a cycle. Both parent and child repeat emotional patterns without realizing it, and both suffer because neither knows how to break the spell. When children turn away, the act is almost never driven by hate. It is driven by confusion, identity formation, and the deep need to rewrite their inner story without the pressure of old expectations. Yet even in this darkness, spiritual wisdom teaches that separation can create space for awareness. When the emotional noise quiets, both sides can begin to see their own patterns more clearly. Children may realize they are not running from the parent, but from their own unhealed wounds. Parents may recognize that the distance is not punishment, but a call for deeper understanding and gentler connection. And when both sides begin to understand the psychological forces at play, the relationship is no longer defined by blame, but by insight. In this light, estrangement is not the end. It is a painful invitation for for both hearts to grow. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how individuation and inner growth have shaped your relationship with your parents or family. Share your experience in the comments below. And if today's message resonates with you, simply type, "I choose my authentic self," to show that you're embracing this Jungian journey with us. 4. The reality of abandoned parents. Many parents quietly confess that the deepest wound in their old age is not illness, poverty, or the slowing of their bodies, but the silence left behind by the very children they raised. Some describe it with a short, heartbreaking sentence: "I raise strangers." Behind those 3 words lies a lifetime of sacrifice, sleepless nights, unspoken worries, and small acts of love that were never recorded but were always given. When an adult child turns away, the parent does not simply lose a relationship. They lose a role, a dream, and a part of their identity. The home they once filled with noise and warmth becomes an echo chamber, reminding them of birthdays, holidays, and ordinary afternoons that will never return. Yet the truth is that this distance rarely forms overnight. It grows slowly from unresolved conflicts, emotional misunderstandings, generational wounds, or the pressures of modern life that push families apart, until one day the relationship quietly fractures. Some children carry resentment from the past, from moments when parents did their best but did not know how to meet certain emotional needs. Others become consumed by their own lives, careers, marriages, stress, survival, and gradually drift away without realizing the damage their absence causes. There are also children who disconnect because they feel they must protect their mental health from patterns or expectations they never knew how to navigate. None of these explanations erase the pain of the parent, but they reveal a difficult truth. Many adult children are not rejecting their parents as humans. They are rejecting the unresolved emotional history. They feel trapped inside. Carl Jung spoke to this when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Much of the distance between parents and adult children is not caused by hatred, but by unhealed emotional inheritance that neither generation fully understands. But as heavy as this reality is, there is another side, one that many elderly parents slowly discover after the initial shock of abandonment. Some begin to reclaim their inner peace through solitude. They explore hobbies they once loved but never had time for. They join community groups, volunteer programs, or small circles of friends who remind them that companionship can be found even outside of family. Through these activities, parents begin to rediscover the self that existed before the identity of motherhood or fatherhood took over their entire life. They reconnect with forgotten passions, creativity, and personal purpose, realizing that their story does not end simply because a child has stepped away. This quiet return to the self is not a form of giving up. It is a form of returning home. It allows parents to experience a deeper kind of peace, one that arises from being present with themselves, rather than waiting for validation or affection that may never come. This journey also reveals a subtle truth. When you stop chasing what is absent, you begin to see the value of what is still present within you. Many parents who once felt hollow eventually find strength in this rediscovery, learning that while the heartbreak of abandonment leaves a scar, it does not have to define the rest of their life. Some even find that solitude opens a door to healing they never expected, helping them grow into a version of themselves that feels more authentic, more grounded, and more at peace than ever before. 5. Transformation through solitude. Solitude becomes a powerful turning point in your life because, as Carl Jung explained, suffering is not just a wound, but a doorway to individuation. The deep inner process where you stop living as a reflection of others and begin to return to your true self. When the noise falls away and you have no one left to impress or perform for, you are forced into an honest meeting with your own soul. And although this silence can feel sharp and uncomfortable, it is often the only environment where real spiritual development can begin. In that quiet space, you start noticing the patterns you used to ignore, the emotional wounds you avoided, and the parts of yourself you buried under responsibility, relationships, and expectations. Loneliness becomes a mirror that shows you where you have abandoned yourself long before anyone else ever did. As you sit with your inner world, something shifts inside you. The pain you once feared begins to reveal its meaning, and the emptiness that felt unbearable starts teaching you what you truly need. Jung believed that this internal confrontation is the heart of transformation, because facing your shadow, your fears, regrets, suppressed emotions, breaks the illusion that you must stay the same to be loved. When you look inward long enough, you begin to see that solitude is not punishment, but purification, a slow removal of everything false, everything that no longer fits the person you are becoming. This is why people often find unexpected strength in their darkest hours. The silence pushes them to grow roots where they once had only reactions, and in that stillness, wisdom begins to form. Solitude strengthens intuition, deepens emotional clarity, and reveals the quiet truths that constant distraction kept hidden, allowing you to step into spirituality not as an escape, but as a deeper understanding of your own nature. Through this journey, you realize that the loneliness you feared is actually shaping your inner character, helping you reclaim the parts of yourself you abandoned to keep the peace or meet expectations. Every painful memory that rises in solitude becomes an opportunity for healing. Every uncomfortable realization becomes a step toward wholeness. Jung taught that individuation is the slow integration of all your pieces, the light, the shadow, the past, and the future into someone authentic and complete. And solitude is where that integration begins. Your suffering becomes the fire that refines you. Your silence becomes the teacher that guides you. And your spiritual strength grows not from avoiding the darkness, but from learning how to walk through it. The lesson hidden inside this process is simple. When you allow solitude to work on you, it reveals your truth, restores your power, and leads you toward a version of yourself that no longer breaks under pressure, but stands rooted in clarity, purpose, and inner peace. If this message resonates with you, declare your strength in the comments. In solitude, I transform. 6. Coping strategies and healing. Healing from a child's abandonment is not a simple process, but a deep inner journey where the spiritual wisdom of Carl Jung becomes a guide that helps you understand your pain and reclaim your strength, reminding you that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent, and showing you how unresolved wounds from the past can silently shape the relationship you have with your children. That is why the first lesson is learning to set boundaries, because loving your child does not mean tolerating humiliation, disrespect, or emotional manipulation. And every time you gently but firmly say, "I deserve to be treated with dignity," you reclaim a part of yourself that you may have forgotten while giving everything to your family. Honoring Jung's teaching that what you allow unconsciously continues until you consciously stop it. Yet even with boundaries, the pain remains heavy until you allow yourself to grieve honestly, letting yourself cry, admit the heartbreak, and speak your truth without shame. Because as Rumi said, the wound is the place where the light enters you. And acknowledging your grief becomes an act of courage that begins to release the weight you have been carrying alone for so long. That honesty naturally leads to the need for connection, because isolation will convince you that you are unworthy. But rebuilding community through friendships, support groups, faith circles, volunteering, or simply opening up to people who genuinely care reminds you that love doesn't vanish just because your child pulled away. This widening circle of support slowly replaces the haunting silence, giving you emotional safety and reminding you that your story continues even when a part of it has been broken. From there, rediscovering your purpose becomes essential, because when children walk away, many parents feel like their entire identity disappears with them. Yet Jung reminds us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, meaning that your life still holds meaning beyond the label of parent. This is your invitation to return to passions you once buried: writing, gardening, creating, teaching, learning, traveling, or helping others. And as you pour your energy into something that makes your soul feel alive, you begin rebuilding the self that was overshadowed by years of sacrifice. And through all of these steps, the most transformative layer is learning to seek meaning, not by pretending everything is fine, but by exploring what this pain is teaching you about boundaries, self-worth, forgiveness, compassion, and the unresolved wounds you may still carry from your own childhood. You may find meaning in faith, in talking honestly with God, or in serving others who are hurting, or in creativity as you turn your pain into art, stories, or quiet acts of beauty that restore your sense of purpose. This shift, finding meaning where there was only loss, turns you into the alchemist of your own soul. Someone who transforms heartbreak into clarity and sorrow into growth. As Viktor Frankl wrote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. And through setting boundaries, grieving with honesty, rebuilding community, rediscovering purpose, and seeking meaning, you step out of the role of the abandoned parent and into the role of someone who is healing, awakening, and remembering their own worth. 7. The spiritual lesson behind the pain. When children turn away from their parents, life is not simply closing a door. It is redirecting you back to your own soul, urging you to reclaim the parts of yourself that were forgotten while you were giving, sacrificing, and carrying the weight of everyone else's needs except your own. The heartbreak cuts deeply because it comes from the very people you once held as infants, the ones you stayed awake for, worried for, and protected with everything you had. Yet the deeper meaning behind this pain is that it is not an ending, but a powerful invitation into transformation, authenticity, and freedom from emotional dependency. The silence, the absence, The unanswered calls can feel like rejection, but underneath that pain is a sacred message. You are being called to rediscover your worth beyond your role as a parent, to understand that your dignity and capacity for joy are not determined by who walks away, and to remember that your identity is rooted in something far more enduring than another person's approval. Even when family ties fail, your heart does not lose its value. Your spirit does not lose its shine. This is where spirituality and spiritual development begin to guide you, reminding you that your existence has meaning, independent of whether your children stay close or drift far. Sometimes the absence of loved ones awakens a deeper presence within you, a resilience that only emerges when everything external collapses. You begin to sense that the emptiness is not a void, but a clearing, a space where your soul can breathe again after years of being overshadowed by responsibility and emotional pressure. Through this space, you slowly rediscover the courage to live fully, not as someone defined by others, but as someone who belongs to themselves. As you walk through this emotional valley, you may notice a shift within you. You become less controlled by guilt, less burdened by unspoken expectations, and more able to set gentle but firm boundaries that protect your peace. You begin to understand that love does not mean allowing disrespect, that forgiveness does not require abandoning yourself, and that closeness is not the same as loyalty. You stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and start asking, "What is life trying to awaken in me through this pain?" When you look at the situation through this lens, the suffering that once felt cruel becomes a teacher that reveals hidden layers of strength, self-respect, and emotional clarity. Gradually, the pain softens and something new emerges, a quiet but powerful recognition that even in the most desolate seasons, your soul is not broken, but being reshaped. You learn that you can live even without constant validation, that you can find joy that does not depend on anyone's presence, and that you can build an inner home no one can abandon. In this way, the very experience that once felt like devastation becomes the beginning of a deeper, wiser relationship with yourself, rooted in spirituality, grounded in self-worth, and strengthened through spiritual development. If today's message spoke to the deeper spiritual lesson within your pain, take a moment to ground that awareness. Comment below, "I choose healing," to honor your inner growth and encourage others to face their own truth with strength. In the end, Carl Jung's insight reminds us that when adult children turn away, it is rarely about simple disrespect. It is a reflection of unhealed wounds, unspoken pain, and patterns carried through generations. Understanding this truth does not erase the hurt, but it does give you the power to respond with clarity, compassion, and strength. Healing begins when awareness replaces blame, and when love becomes a conscious choice rather than an old expectation. If this message brought you clarity or comfort, please remember to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Your journey toward deeper understanding and healing continues here.